At Motoki's family grave site while he's praying, Matsuno and Ma suddenly arrive. She bows politely to Motoki and urges Ma to greet him. Ma hesitates because Motoki looks like a burglar to him. Matsuno lightly scolds her son, then introduces Ma as the child she had been pregnant with the last time she and Motoki met. Motoki says nothing and quietly walks past them. Matsuno apologizes, insisting that everything was her fault, but Motoki still does not respond and continues walking away from the grave. Back at the cafe, Yumeko wonders what kind of important day Motoki must be commemorating, but chooses not to dwell on it. She instead asks Shunzaburo if he has learned anything new about the case aside from the shoe prints. Shunzaburo admits there is no additional information, which makes Yumeko raise her voice in disbelief, then tells Shunzaburo that he could have simply called her. Shunzaburo explains that he wanted to check if she had remembered anything because he personally finds Keisuke suspicious. Yumeko becomes angry and insists that Keisuke has nothing to do with her case. Shunzaburo apologizes, saying he acted too hastily. He explains that he wants to become dependable enough to manage cases without Motoki, so Motoki will finally be able to retire. Yumeko is surprised because she thought the two detectives worked well together. She wonders if Motoki treats Shunzaburo the same way he treats others. Shunzaburo explains that Motoki is trying to get by life fast. He mentions that Motoki eats nothing but bread and milk, and during investigations, he is always reckless to the point that Shunzaburo fears he might die on the job. To Shunzaburo, Motoki behaves as if he truly intends to die doing his duty. He admits he wants Motoki to retire so he can stay safe and live the rest of his life in peace. Suddenly, Yumeko remembers how deeply depressed she used to be and how genuinely she had wanted everything to end. She abruptly stands and insists that they need to find Motoki immediately, because he may be closer to death than they realize. They arrive at the town where Motoki lives and decide to walk the remaining distance. As they do, Yumeko asks if Motoki has some kind of illness that makes him want to rush through his life. Shunzaburo explains that Motoki used to be married, which shocks her since Motoki seems like the type not to marry. She learns that his wife, Satomi, passed away and that today is her death anniversary. He explains that he had learned about the situation during his first summer as a detective. He had overheard coworkers talking about an incident involving Satomi while Motoki was visiting the graveyard. He became curious but didn't want to ask Motoki directly because the matter felt too personal. Instead, he searched around the office for any records of the incident. Eventually, he found Satomi's file, which detailed that she had died after falling from a pedestrian bridge. Shunzaburo tells Yumeko that he feels Motoki is working out of despair. Yumeko suddenly smells takoyaki and insists that they stop to buy some. Shunzaburo says he isn't hungry, but Yumeko argues that the takoyaki is for Motoki, since all he ever eats is bread. As she says this, her own stomach growls. Yumeko remarks that no one can be happy when they are hungry. She gestures proudly at herself, claiming she is this cheerful because she always eats whenever she feels like it and makes sure she eats as many as she wants. Shunzaburo finds himself agreeing as she heads toward the stall to buy takoyaki and orders him to buy noodles. Motoki sits on a bridge and quietly thinks while taking in the scenery. He considers Matsuno's apology pointless. His stomach growls, and checking the time, he realizes it is already past lunch. He finds it strange that he still gets hungry even when he has no real desire to eat. His thoughts return to Satomi's death, and he feels it was unfair that she had to be the one who died. Reaching into his pocket, he pulls out a piece of bread. Before he can take a bite, the sounds of children playing catch his attention. He notices several kids playing soccer by the riverside and remembers Matsuno mentioning that Ma likes soccer as well. He recalls that they live nearby, so he tries to see if he can spot Ma among the children, but everything looks blurry, reminding him that he's getting old. He leans forward over the railing to get a better look, even deciding to jump onto the railing for a better vantage point. But Yumeko and Shunzaburo, who have just arrived, misinterpret the gesture. Thinking he intends to jump to his death, they rush forward and tackle him, which only makes things worse, leaving Motoki hanging off the edge of the bridge. Shunzaburo pleads with him not to end his life, which angers Motoki, since that was never his intention. He demands they pull him back up. Once safely on the bridge, he scolds them for pushing him off. Shunzaburo tries to explain that they were trying to save him, but Yumeko admits that her stomach might have been responsible for the push. Yumeko suggests that they all go to his place to talk things out, while Shunzaburo mentions that they bought him lunch, so he doesn't need to keep surviving on bread and milk. Motoki's apartment turns out to be a mess, but he still lets them in and tells them to leave as soon as they finish eating. Yumeko notices the small altar with his wife's picture. She and Shunzaburo quietly pay their respects, and Motoki asks how they even found out. Shunzaburo admits that he looked into it himself, but Motoki assures him it is fine since his wife has been gone for 4 years now. He insists that they don't need to walk on eggshells around him because of her death. Yumeko suddenly insists that it isn't fine at all, especially since they almost walked in on him ending his life. Motoki tries to deny it, but Yumeko continues scolding him, pointing out that Shunzabaru worries constantly because Motoki tends to behave like he wants to die while on the job. Motoki reflects on her words and admits that it honestly wouldn't be a bad idea. He says he no longer cares when he dies since he has no relatives left anyway. Not wanting to let the gloom settle again, Yumeko brings up the takoyaki they bought and suggests they eat while talking since they will get cold. Motoki refuses, even after she offers him noodles as an alternative. Yumeko becomes irritated and tells him he has a terrible habit of pushing people away. She even comments that Satomi must have been an incredibly kind person to marry someone as rude as him. Motoki agrees that she truly was and claims that her kindness ended up being the cause of her death. Shunzabaru senses the mood darkening again, but Yumeko suggests shifting the topic and asks how they fell in love instead of talking about her passing. Shunzabaru finds the timing inappropriate, but Yumeko explains that she is curious and that Motoki himself already said they shouldn't worry about bringing it up. Feeling frustrated, Motoki decides to share. He tells them that he recalls first meeting Satomi at a convenience store when they both reached for the same carton of milk. She insisted that he take it, and after some back and forth, he accepted just so he could leave. She mentioned seeing him around town wearing a suit and asked if he was off that day. He didn't bother answering her, but she continued to share things about herself before realizing she was keeping him. He had thought she was strange and simply walked out afterward. He remembers spotting her around town multiple times after that, always helping random people go about their day. Eventually, he realized he wasn't just running into her by chance, but that he had begun actively looking for her without noticing. He recalls deciding to wait outside the convenience store she'd often visited, offering her the last carton of milk he had just purchased. That moment became the start of their relationship, eventually leading to their marriage. Their marriage was nothing extraordinary, but they had been happy together. He remembers that on one of his days off, they had planned to watch a movie. On their way to the theater, Satomi noticed Matsuno, who had been heavily pregnant at the time and struggling with grocery bags. Feeling sorry for her, Satomi offered help and asked Motoki to go on ahead to buy their tickets. Motoki agreed, unaware that he would regret that choice for the rest of his life. While helping Matsuno with her groceries, Satomi learned she had been due the previous day. Since labor had not yet started, the doctor sent Matsuno home and instructed her to exercise more to encourage it. Matsuno chose to do her errands since it felt more productive. As they reached the pedestrian bridge, Satomi hesitated because Matsuno could go into labor at any moment. However, Matsuno insisted that climbing stairs would help trigger it and felt safe because Satomi was with her. Unfortunately, as she climbed with Satomi behind her, Matsuno suddenly experienced a sharp pain and fell backward, colliding with Satomi, who was shocked to see her falling. When Matsuno looked to check on her, Satomi was unconscious with blood pooling beneath her head. Satomi was immediately taken to the hospital. Motoki rushed there as soon as he heard what had happened. When he arrived and saw the doctor's sullen expressions around Satomi's body, he realized then that he had lost her forever. He blamed himself, thinking that if he had stayed by her side that day, things might have turned out differently. Now he feels forced to live the rest of his life in regret. Yumeko gently offers him takoyaki, but he angrily refuses, demanding to know why he should eat at all. Yumeko insists that he needs to eat because he is still alive. She admits that her memory feels hazy, but she is certain she once wanted to die. She discovered that being alive can be wonderful. She explains she now wakes up every morning feeling refreshed and takes a walk in the park to energize herself before work. She adds that there is romance to look forward to, and she enjoys visiting trendy cafes with her friends. She makes a point to eat until she's full and get plenty of rest so she can greet each day with a smile. She adds that he cannot die without experiencing how good the takoyaki or noodles taste. Motoki complains that he has already eaten takoyaki and noodles before, but he eventually decides to eat some just so Yumeko will stop insisting. He notes that they have already gone cold, yet they still taste good, especially since it has been so long since he last had takoyaki. After lunch, they decide to take a walk by the riverbank. Yumeko comments that the weather is nice, though Motoki argues that it is humid. Shunzabaru uses the moment to compliment Yumeko's strength, saying he admires her because even after losing her memory, she continues to live each day appreciating life. Yumeko suddenly notices a cat and Shunzabaru becomes excited as well, deciding to join her in petting it. Motoki lingers behind and a ball rolls toward him. Ma runs up and recognizes him from the graveyard. Motoki realizes who he is and tosses the ball back. Ma does not leave immediately. He says his mother told him about Satomi and explains that Satomi is the reason he and his mother are alive, so he gives Motoki his thanks. He then hurries back to his game. Motoki watches him, amused by how small Ma is while still doing his best to play soccer with kids much bigger than him. He looks up at the sky and tells Satomi that the life she saved is living to the fullest. For an instant, Motoki feels as if Satomi is proudly smiling at him. He returns to Yumeko and Shunzaburo, who are happily playing with the cat. He says that when he mentioned not caring about dying, he only meant not caring about dying while working. He stresses that with such an overly emotional partner like Shunzaburo, he cannot afford to die and leave him alone. Shunzaburo bursts into tears of joy and tries to hug him, while Motoki attempts to pry him off. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.